Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm a licensed clinical psychotherapist. I have degrees in psychology, theology, and marriage and family therapy, and a national certification in dialectical behavioral therapy. In this video, I'm not seeking to diagnose anyone. I'm only willing to offer insight into situations like these. Hi. I've been playing with my intros. Isn't that fun? Okay. So today is going to be a bit of a more open panel. I like to be prepared. So this is difficult for me. But first, let me thank the Patreons. Maurice Novembre, Devin, Judah Orenda, Adra Kapoy, Question Everything, and Mrs. KP Bailey. Without you and the subscribers, I could not do what I do. So thank you so much for all of your support. All right, let's see who's in the chat. Adra Kapoy, always one. Number one. Adrian Hicks, thank you so much for being here. Nina Williams, she says, hi, everyone. And she's been following along with Shadow Work Wednesdays. If you haven't, you can still catch up. There's a playlist on the channel of the Shadow Work Wednesdays, and you can get caught up and come in anytime. She has a question. Thank you, Adra Kapoy, for putting in the Cash App. I don't have like super chats and things like that yet, so I appreciate you putting that in there. Hey, Larry Nero. Okay, so Nina says, my question is, after the last show, the Shadow Work Wednesday, a lot of anxiety has been coming up and it feels like something from childhood. Can you help me understand what's happening? Thank you. Okay. So I think one of the things we look at is, we were talking to our inner child during Shadow Work Wednesdays, but as far as the shadow goes, it starts in childhood. It starts where our insecurities are. So when we're talking to our shadow, we can also say we're talking to our inner child. And what happens through processing our shadow, doing our shadow work, we are essentially re-parenting our inner child, because our inner child is going to have us do unconscious processes that maybe we in our cognitive mind and our adult mind would not do. We may be more prone to something that looks like a temper tantrum or looks like impulsive type behaviors, whether that's overeating or whether that's self-harming or lots of different things. And so we in our adult state and our adult capabilities reparents our inner child. So like I was speaking to somebody earlier who looked at something, had kind of this just sporadic thought to self-harm, and literally responded to the inner voice with, we don't do that anymore. That's not how we do things around here. And that is how you kind of know when those urges or inner thoughts or intrusive thoughts are coming from your inner child, is when your natural kind of response to it is to parentify it like you would a small child. Because small children don't have the words and the ability to process their emotions, to verbalize what's happening to them, to understand what they need to ask for. They just do things. They burst out crying, or they bang their head on a wall, or they throw themselves on the floor and have a temper tantrum. They act out in some sort of way to demonstrate the urgency of their emotions. And so at times our inner child or our shadow is going to act like that. And it behooves us to, as part of our processing. So when I talk about processing, we're reparenting that inner child to, essentially help them to grow up. Okay. So hopefully that answers why you may be having more inner child stuff come up, especially if you're having intrusive thoughts like that don't seem to necessarily come from you or be things that you think would be right um to naturally think. It's because it's coming from shadow. So you're on the right path. You're doing the right thing. You're doing the right work. But now it's time to reparent that inner child in a way that works better for the inner child. Okay. Um, Larry Nero, he says, "What do I have to do to be a mod?" Essentially, essentially, the mods are people that I know in real life. Now, um, I do not know Adra Kapoy in real life, but I have a lot of interactions with him in other spheres. We have had conversations, we have talked, so I don't necessarily know him in real life, but we've had a lot of interactions. So essentially, to be a mod, would need to be somebody that I've had a lot of interactions with and that I trust at this point. So that's how I've picked my mods so far. Okay. Um, Nina says, "Okay, great. That gives me a clearer path, and thank you." Okay. So Larry Nero says, "Why do people attract a lot of narcissists, but they despise them?" It's such a great question, right? Because it seems like the people who are really empathetic, kind, generous, giving souls tend to constantly attract that narcissistic type personality. I'm not, again, I can't diagnose. So for anybody watching, I'm not diagnosing anybody. Okay. Um, but it seems like that happens, right? And sometimes you'll have the super kind, empathetic, generous person who has been harmed and hurt and heartbroken so many times by narcissistic people, they start to actually get hard and take on some of those qualities. But what actually happens is when we think about somebody who has narcissistic traits or um, narcissistic characteristics, it tends to be a person who is a taker, right? They want to, they're kind of the what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of it? What are you going to do for me? Um, just that the taking personality. It doesn't, I'm not saying selfish because it is a little bit different, but it's more of a they want to be given things. Okay. So that can be emotional energy, physical things, material wealth, actions. They want things to come in their direction. And so they are just naturally, almost instinctually going to be attracted to givers. And so if somebody is very kind, very supportive, very giving, then they're going to have a lot of that type of personality try to be around them, and not just romantically, but also like friendships, family members. They're going to want to seek out the giver. And so, like, for instance, when we talk about the narcissistic personality type, one of the telltale signs is that they have a supply. And a supply are people that they can use and take from. So they could have a person who is their emotional supply, who they know that they can go to anytime they need. So like Dr. Johnson, Dr. Tia Sound Johnson calls that emotional labor. And now it's a very known concept, but it's kind of like when you need emotional support from someone, that other person is doing emotional labor for you. Okay. Which is not inherently a bad thing. When we care about people, we will do emotional labor for them. Eventually we will need it to be reciprocated. And when it's reciprocated, then that that's a healthy relationship. So for someone with this type of personality, though, they could have a person who is there for emotional labor. They could have a person that is there to help them pay their bills. That's the sprinkle sprinkle lady. They could have a person who is there to drive them around places, actions, come and cut their lawn, those kind of things. Um, or even going the other way, like for men, they could have a supply that's there for physical intimacy, one that's there for emotional support, one that's, it can go back and forth. And so, um, it's the supply. Now, they hit the jackpot when they can find one person that is a total supply. So it used to be that people like this were referred to as like succubus and incubus, which is where we then later got the myth of vampires from. But actually, succubi and incubi take psyche energy, they take psychological energy, and that's actually what they're draining from the person. And that's where those concepts kind of came from, is that you will have people that just drain your energy completely. And so that's that type of personality type. So if you're a giver, again, you are like a flame to all the moths. And it can become difficult if you are a flame and you want a flame. If you're a giver and you want a giver, maybe you want to know what that's like for once. Then it's difficult to find that other giver because you have to swim through the sea of moths. So at times it becomes more like we have to create really, really good boundaries so that it's not so obvious to people who want to use and take that we are so much of a giver. We need to become a bit more reserved in our giving and our empathy for people where it's reciprocated. And sometimes we got to vet people a little bit. So hopefully that was understandable. Um, Larry Nero says, what early signs to look for? I wish I could be before they open up their mouth. I totally, yeah. Yeah, it would be nice if they had signs, right? Like, I'm a moth, I'm a flame, you know. But some signs to look for generally are a giving spirit, because now that does not mean that people can't fake it, right? Because some of the really, really good ones can fake it, and they do something called love bombing in the beginning, where they seem to be so giving, so loving, so nurturing. And the point is like getting a fish on a hook, you know. They try to get you hooked fast and early. They are getting you on the line fast. And so you want to look for somebody who has good boundaries themselves and isn't love bombing. People who are really empathetic can inadvertently love bomb in the beginning because they're just so caring and they get so excited about meeting somebody that they really like. And so they do a lot of things and they give a lot of things and they are always there for the person to the detriment of themselves. And so in the beginning, what you're really looking for is somebody who knows themselves really well. They have really clear boundaries for themselves, and they have kind of just a giving spirit nature. They are a supporting person. You can kind of tell that it's in there. Is that always going to work? No, because some of these people are very, very skilled and talented in getting a supply on the line. And so you know, any adult who has been in the dating game, we've all been fooled, right? We've been fooled. And it's not because of any fault for ourselves at all. There's no fault in you. There's no fault in me for getting played by somebody like that. When you are a giving, loving person, um, it's on them. It's their behavior. Yes, we have to deal with the pain, and now we have to process the trauma and the heartache and all that. And, we got to go through all of that. And it sucks. It truly sucks. But the fault is clearly on them. It's always good to try to maintain being a really good, giving, empathetic person. So just tighten up your boundaries, be watchful of things, and hopefully that helps kind of gatekeep that a little bit. Okay. So Adrian says, i.e., the brain is nothing without Pinky. Yes, you need Pinky in the brain. And thank you for the Pinky in the brain reference. That was great. That was great. Okay. All right. Jason Muex, thank you for coming in. He says females with rosters of men at their disposal qualify. Woo! Don't you think so? Wouldn't you think so? Anybody with a roster, wouldn't you think so? Right? Because each person on the roster has their place, right? It has what you can get from that person. It's not always just sexual, but even when it is sexual, there are specific things you're going to get from that person. Do I hook up with this person when I want to be more aggressive? Do I hook up with this person when I want more cuddles and loves and snuggles? Do I hook up with this person when they're also going to be giving me gas money? Again, shout out to the sprinkle lady, right? I should put hashtag drizzle drizzle on the bottom. Um, but yes, of course it qualifies because you have different, even whether it's females or males with rosters of people at their disposal, it's because each person fits a different part of what you want at that given time. I'm not going to say need, it's what you want at that given time. So yes, it definitely qualifies. Okay. Adra Capoy says a non-diagnosed narcissist I know tried to take my soul. They all do. They all do. People with that traits. They will utilize the supply until the supply is empty. And then you don't go in the trash can at that point either. I mean, here's the thing to think about, guys, is that if you are dealing with somebody who has these types of traits, if they are coming across like an incubus or a succubus, they do not ever put you in the trash. Even if you break up with them, they never put you in the trash. They always put you in reserves. They have to keep it in their mind that you are always in reserves to circle back to later whenever needed. And they will figure out what is necessary to rehook you on the line. A lot of times this is like nostalgia, like, remember the good times we had? Remember when this happened? Remember we were laughing about this? Remember how that was good? They will circle back, or they'll use the age old, I've been through a lot. I went to therapy. I got healed. Now, some people, yes, have been through a lot of things and they process things and they heal their trauma when they've made mistakes. So they take a little bit of that truth, that believable truth, and try to use it to get you hooked back on the line. But again, if you start looking for, do you have good boundaries? Do you have a giving spirit at this point? We have to be looking for those things. But also, if somebody used you until you were dried up, sometimes they just don't get a second chance. They just don't deserve the second chance. You're just done. And you can move on to somebody else with your new health and healing and happiness. Okay. Hi, Toya. Thank you so much for being in here. I'm going to, oh, I can't do it from here. Eventually, Toya, I'm going to figure out how to get a wrench to you in StreamYard. But I definitely want you to have a wrench. Let's see. Everybody says hi to Toya. Everybody loves Toya, right? Okay. So, yeah, when we talk about narcissist or dealing with narcissistic traits, it's become a trope, right? Like people are calling each other narcissists, but it goes back to Narcissus, right? So Narcissus fell in love with his own reflection, during a period of time, as the story goes, this is ancient mythology, right? During a period of time, there weren't really mirrors commonly, and he sees himself in the water and falls in love with his own reflection, right? So it's when you love yourself more than anybody else, right? So people with these personality type characteristics, even if it's not a full-blown personality disorder, don't view other people as like fully people, like fully human or as important as themselves. It's kind of like They have this perception that their feelings feel more than other people's feelings feel to them, which you can understand how that's narcissistic because it's like, if I don't feel it, it doesn't count kind of thing. So it's like, if I'm sad, then I'm sadder than the saddest sad that ever was sad. So it means more. So it should mean more to me and it should mean more to you because my sad is the saddest sad that ever sadded, right? But when you're sad, you should get over it. Be strong. What's wrong with you? Don't be a pussy. It's very I'm not feeling it, so it's not that big of a deal type of mentality, right? Um Adrian Hicks says that that brother must have been fine. Hmm. Okay. So, um, see, you got me off track. Okay, narcissists. But if somebody hurts their feelings, then their anger is the angriest, most righteous. It's for good reason, damn it, because their anger is always for a good, valid reason. It's the most angry than anybody's ever angered in the history of anger. Okay. But when you're angry, it's why are you overreacting? Why are you being ridiculous? Because they feel calm. So it doesn't count. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't feel it, so it's not that big of a deal. And that's where that a lot of that gaslighting type of behavior and changing reality comes from, is because they could literally feel frustrated and throw a giant scary temper tantrum, throwing things, punching walls, hitting stuff, hitting you, kicking the dog, doing all manner of stuff. And then when they're calm, it's the same thing because past them had the feeling, not current them. You see, it's the same way. And so you'll be like, you just did this and you were out of control and you were so frustrated and pissed off. And they're like, what are you even talking about? You punched a hole in this wall. No, I was just irritated. It's not, I was going to paint that wall anyway. It's not that big of a deal. Or, do you see how that gaslighting happens? Is because it's all in how they feel at that moment in time. Then that is reality to them. How I feel right now is reality. It can also go the other way. If you piss them off, then as they're pissed off, it will be always and never statements. You always piss me off. You never try to do the right thing. You're always coming after me. You're always nagging me. You're always on my ass. You always piss me off. It's because it's how I feel at this moment. So even though you're going, bro, I'm always here for you. I'm always giving to you. But in that moment, that is not reality to them because they're mad right then. So when we're dealing with people who, whether they have the personality or they have character traits of that, or there's actually something called a narcissistic relationship type where it falls under codependence, where one is a taker and one is a giver. Then maybe outside of the relationship, neither of those people are like that, but they are in a very unhealthy dynamic. That's where you get a lot of that gaslighting because to them, reality is how they feel in that moment. And so there really is no rhyme or reason or logic to that kind of behavior. I saw Mom Brinkley came in. Hi, Mom Brinkley. Nice to see you. Victoria says, best narcissistic explanation and definition I've ever heard. Oh, thank you, Victoria. I personally like to visualize things. Like I like to have a visual representation of what I'm thinking. And it's like keep it simple, stupid, that KISS methodology where I'm like, everything is so much easier to understand if you just take it down to the nuts and bolts, except quantum physics. The new Nobel Peace Prize for quantum physics has my brain in a tizzy. It's it's about we've known about non-local, permanence for a long time, but now it's about local permanence. It's about the Matrix. Can I just it's the Matrix, and they just won the Nobel Prize. So my brain is in a tizzy about that. But anyway, I like things to be simple and understandable because then if I can understand it, then I can explain it where other people know, "Oh my gosh, that's what I'm dealing with. That's the thing. That's been it all along." And if we can see it, we can avoid it. And even if we can't avoid it, if we do get slung in on something, we can call it out immediately like, "Oh, it's right there. This is the personality trait right there, and we can call it immediately, and if it isn't fixed immediately, if it's a relationship dynamic, those kind of things can be fixed through a lot of communication and effort. If it's the person's personality or personality trait, that's much more difficult, and if you call out narcissistic type behaviors. Now, don't go around saying you're a narcissist. But if you say, hey, I was listening to Maggie and she said this is a narcissistic trait. And so we can't really be doing this anymore. Like we need to figure out, first of all, what triggered it, where'd that come from? And how do we get around that? How do we get it to where you're able to verbalize what your needs and feelings are in the moment? How are you able to verbalize it to me without the reality changing and the gaslighting and the lack of self-control piece? Like we can't do that anymore. So that communication will help with that. Jason Mueck says feminism seems inherently narcissistic. There's a lot that can be said about feminism. Today, I want to talk about mental health concepts, but here's what I want to say about feminism is that it started out, unfortunately, on a racist foothold. Unfortunately, it was sold to American women as something different to get American women on board. And then it was rebranded as intersectionalism to get Black women on board. And here's my thing. You can't start something inherently wrong and just keep trying to tweak it to make it better, right? It's kind of become the She-Ra man haters club, and that's not ever how it was sold. So there's a lot with that. Maybe next Sunday I don't talk a lot of politics, but I kind of keep that personal. But we can talk about some of this stuff, movements. I tend to like to talk about movements because I can apply them to social concepts or even psychological concepts. So, maybe we can do that next Sunday. That might be fun. Larry Nero says, what's crazy is they can turn up into them and they don't like it because the veil gets removed and it evens the playing field. Oh, yeah. I mean, nobody likes their poor behavior pointed out. Like, who likes that? That's seems a bit masochistic, and we all have the tendency to get a little bit defensive, or at least feel a little defensive. That's just a protection mechanism. We want to, protect ourselves when somebody's calling out poor behavior. A narcissist can't really have the conversation. They can't, and they can maybe fake their way through it, but then that behavior is just, it might even be good for a week, but it's just gonna come back, right? So having the conversation in and of itself, most of the time is pretty difficult for somebody with those kind of personality traits. It's gonna be really hard. Okay. Aja Kapoor says the great escape of a narcissist is most difficult. Oh, yeah. Because they got you hooked and they knew from day one how, when your supply was empty or you broke up with them, they were already unconsciously figuring out how to snare you after the breakup. Like they're ahead of you on this game and they're going to circle you back in and circle you back in and circle you back in. And if they can't, Then what they'll do is team building, and they will go and find your support system and spin a narrative to your support system about who you are as a person to try to get your support system on their side. Because what they're trying to do is break you down enough and change reality enough that you will come back to them and be some sort of supply. Because remember, even when you're arguing with them, fighting with them, getting into it with them, you're still giving them emotional energy. You're still a supply as long as you engage with them in any way, shape, or form. So calling it the great escape, that's immaculate. that is that is a perfect way. Keep Coke off the video. I didn't go get a glass before this one. Okay. Nina says, boy, I don't miss my old narcissist. Oh my gosh. It's oh happy day when they're finally out of your life and you were healed from all of that. That's just, you just want to keep your peace no matter what, right? Okay. So Nina says, what about having a dream and you see your old narcissist and you walk away? It's beautiful. That means that you've done enough work and you've healed enough of the things that kind of trigger you um, about them. Because sometimes, man, we've escaped a narcissist and gotten away from them, and it can be years later, and we hear their name and we're just pissed off again, or we cry, or we start to get an anxiety attack. That happens a lot. We'll start to get an anxiety attack just at the mention of their name, right? When you have a dream, or even if it's a daydream and you think about it, and there's some sort of interaction with the previous narcissist and you just walk away or you laugh or it just is no big deal, it means that that healing is healed, right? It also means that your psyche is like, okay, this is what we do next time. Okay. Whether it's the next time you see that person and you just walk away, or the next time you're presented with that type of behavior, what your psyche is saying, we are now strong enough to just turn around and walk away. And this is what we do. It's like your unconscious is teaching you in that moment, like, what do we do when we see a narcissist? We walk away. And so it's your psyche being really, really supportive of who you are and showing the health and the growth that you've gone through if you're not having those triggered type reactions to seeing somebody who was narcissistic to you. Okay. Larry Nero says they get mad because God gave you a brain and you decided to use it. Oh man. When you call out a narcissist and you have the receipts and you're just like this and this and this, and then they try to do the gaslighting and you're like, nope, this and this and this. And then they try to change reality and you're like, I haven't it, this and this and this. Whew. The emotional reaction. I mean, you can see their inner shadow come out, that inner child. Like they can get, I mean, people can get dangerous, right? Because they always want to be one step ahead, at least one step ahead of you. And if you are evening the playing field, that can get dangerous sometimes. That can get bad. That can get bad. Yeah, Toya says it's very ugly stuff. It is. It is. And I'm not talking just the basic, not so healthy codependence relationship. Like this is the upper echelon of dysfunctional relationship. Okay. All right. Larry Nero says, makes me think Hollywood is full of narcs because there's no better actors in the world than them. I mean, it's changing reality, right? And there has to be a narcissistic kind of slant to Hollywood. And I'm not talking about the theater. That to me, that is two separate things. But in Hollywood, there's so much like focus on them, and they can set trends and they set some beauty standards and those kind of things. And so there has to be, at least in Hollywood itself, the system itself, there has to be some inherent narcissism kind of baked into the system, if not the actual people themselves. Adrian Hicks says the best solution for a narcissist is scorched earth. Yeah, burn it all down. Like, burn it all I also know somebody who utilizes the robot in dealing with narcissistic type gaslighting and trying to trigger you to get any type of emotional reaction. Sometimes people who have narcissistic traits will actually start a fight to get emotional energy from you. And so when they're playing these games, when they're doing these things, trying to start a fight, trying to draw you back in, if you just don't have an emotional response, right? I've worked with couples before that are going through divorce, and one of them will start to play these narcissistic type games. And I always advise the other person to respond as if this is a business relationship. Because honestly, at this point, we're dissolving a contract. So this is business, right? It's just business. First of all, we don't respond unless a question is asked, an appropriate question, not like, who the hell do you think you are? But any type of like, am I picking the kids up Wednesday at 7? Yes, Wednesday at 7. That type of respond if there's a question. If there's no question, we don't respond. And secondarily, we respond to everything as if we're writing a business letter. We want everything in writing too, because again, we have that like the gaslighting and the changing of reality. And when you're going through court, whew, and they're believable, aren't they? Like when they're team building or talking to other people, they can be super, super believable. And so we want to make sure everything is in writing. So we're not going to be having a phone call. We can text, we can email. Um, Everything's going to be in writing because I'm bringing all the receipts, and everything that I have said is very businesslike and professional. Um, because what you have to think about is what shows up in court. But sometimes we have the court of public opinion too. So even when you're not going through a divorce, but you're trying to remove yourself from someone with those kind of traits, make sure everything's in writing and act very businesslike. That kind of boundary, there's no wiggle room there. It's like they're running up against a wall, and people with narcissistic traits don't have a counter to the business like professional response. People can call it cold and callous. I call it professional and businesslike, because you can be polite as you would someone at work, but there's no emotional countenance there. So that's a good boundary to keep, by the way. You will see. Okay, so Nina says, yeah, thank you. Um, Larry Nero says, I like that bait. Yeah. Toya says, fire. Jason Mua says, is there a degree of narcissistic tendencies that's healthy? The way that I like to explain things a lot of times is that healthy is the midline. Okay. So like if you think of like a bell curve, everybody's kind of in the middle. So if you think about it like that, but I go this way. So healthy is the midline. Now, like a lot of times people who are empathetic, giving, supportive type people, they will often, because of how they've been trained by takers, they will often think anything they do for themselves is selfish. And so like you might have the healthy level of selfish, is here, right? Or maybe anything above this is actually selfish. And they're so like, I'm under the screen. They're so down here, so giving and loving, and they've been trained to be so giving that they do something that goes right here and they're like, I don't want to be selfish. Right? So narcissism can be the same way, is that there is a healthy level of narcissism, because who should love you more than you? No one. You should love yourself more than anybody else. You should have your back more than anybody else. You should make sure your needs are met more than anybody else, first before anybody else, right? Like there are certain things that may feel selfish, or they may feel narcissistic, or they may seem narcissistic, but it's actually just healthy. You should love yourself more than anybody else in the whole wide world loves you. You should have your back. You should. Now, when we have children, things change, but I'm just talking about in general, right? You should have your back. You should make sure your needs are met, right? That that is healthy. That's so it's a healthy level, but we're not into the realm of narcissism, right? When we start getting in the realm of narcissism, we get a little delulu, about my own importance. I used to hear as a child, and I told my own children, if you want people to think you're special, then be special. Don't just tell people how special you are, right? You do something, develop some talents, do some things, do some good in the world, be special. That's how you become special. Okay. Um, Adrian Hicks says they don't like robots. Ooh, they do not like robots. Not at all. Not at all. Nina says, hit the like button, peeps. Yeah, hit the like button. Okay. Gage Harding says, instructions unclear. A toaster stuck in ass. Please advise. Oh, Gage. Um, Gage is someone I know in real life. There's actually going to be there's actually going to be a show with Gage, a video that's going to come out, and we're going to talk about nihilistic autism, and it's going to be great. It is hilarious. I'm working on editing it now, but it's where I interviewed him, and it's going to be great. And he's hilarious. He is hilarious. Okay, so Adrian Higgs says short but special or regular special. Whatever works, right? if you want to be special. But it's more like regular special, right? Like if you want people to think that you're special, then be special, right? It kind of plays into that same, like in relationships, where I'll tell people, if you want to find Mrs. Right, you have to be Mr. Right. If you want to find Mr. Right, you have to be Mrs. Right. We don't just tell people of our inherent value. My inherent value is important to me, as it should be. And I know my inherent value, and my knowledge of my inherent value, it charts the course for how I treat myself. If I think I am stinking great, I'm going to treat myself like I'm stinking great. So that it's important to me. My inherent value isn't important to others, just inherently, right? Like there's this baseline, humans be nice to each other, that we kind of wish everybody would employ, where humans are just nice to each other. But when we talk about I don't I don't necessarily do the bring to the table thing, right? Like, because that's a business proposition. Marriage is a business proposition. That's a contract with the government. In relationships, there shouldn't be the business table, where we're talking back and forth, and you give this and I give that, and it's very transactional and ew. But when we talk about being special or being special to somebody else, then it is about not my inherent value to myself, but my inherent or my performed value to others, right? As an example, little kids. So as a mother, I have a little kid, and I tell the little kid, you have to just do what I say. Well, little kids don't do what they're told, right? But if you, as a child grows and you establish that you are trustworthy, you are responsive, you are there for their greater good, you are there for their emotional labor, they can trust you, then we're showing, not just through punishment, but also through our actions, that you are trusted and they can follow through with what you say. So as they get older, they see that it's demonstrated. In a relationship with somebody, if you just go into it and say like, but I'm great, so you need to do great things for me because I'm awesome. That's that like Delulu thing, right? Like, that's great for me, that I'm awesome, and it's good that I know that, but it doesn't mean anybody else has to accept my inherent greatness. But if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I demonstrate my greatness, I demonstrate what I think is great about me. So maybe it's being kind, it's being empathetic, it's being understanding, it's being non-judgmental, it's being giving, it's being able to provide emotional labor and be supportive and give good advice. And if those are the things that I think are inherently great about me, then I have to show it, right? So I have to be the active form. I have to be special. And then when other people see those things and they're like, "Yeah, she's great," then that's how you demonstrate that. So that's the part of like healthy narcissism. The narcissist is trying to shove it down your throat how freaking awesome they are. Whereas for us, if we want to be thought of as special, we have to be special. We have to demonstrate what we're willing to show to other people. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, let's see. Nina says, thank you for the free group therapy twice a week. So Shadowworks and Subscribers Choice Sunday is the free group therapy. Hopefully it's helpful. I mean, my biggest thing always, always, always is getting information out, especially when there's misinformation or people are using concepts as a weapon. I hate that. And because people can't make informed decisions when they're given false information, like that's just terrible. So, my hope is to get the right information out there, even when people may not like it. Leon 008, thank you for coming in. He says, I'll have to listen on the rewind. All right. So he's going to be number one replay gang. Okay. Gage says, got it out. The nice people at IKEA yanked it out. 10 out of 10 customer service. Anyway, what a nice chat that's going on here. He's so great. Okay. Adrian Hicks says, I'm awesome. Sounds like a great explanation to me. Yeah. I mean, for ourselves, of course, I'm awesome. And you should think you're awesome, right? Like, I should think I'm awesome. If I don't think I'm awesome, I need to figure out why. Maybe I'm making mistakes or making the same mistakes over and over again, or I've done things that weren't so nice, or I'm doing some things that aren't that great. Then those are things to address, right? Or maybe I was told many, many times, you're not awesome. In fact, you ain't shit. Maybe we were told that so much we started to absorb it into our own psyche to where we just start thinking, I'm worthless. I'm nothing. I ain't shit. I'm not awesome. I'm terrible. Then those are things that we need to process on, because the healthier you get, the more you process your trauma, you've accepted yourself, you've accepted your flaws. In fact, some of your flaws, actually, you view them as quirks now. And it's okay, because we all have quirks, and that just makes me quirky. Then, as we accept that about ourselves, we start realizing, I am great. I am great. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I'm not going to fit well with everybody. And thank God, because, there's some people I don't like so much. And that works for other people. And they can be all the way over there being their kind of weird. I'm over here being my kind of weird. And the people who like me are also kind of weird. So um, hopefully that makes sense, but I'm awesome for the type of people that I want to be around. And that's kind of what we should all be working for. And that's what I mean when I say to get Mrs. Right, you have to be Mr. Right. Who is your Mrs. Right? And what kind of Mr. Right do you need to be to get Mrs. Right? And vice versa. If you want Mr. Right, you got to be Mrs. Right. And who do you need to be? And I don't mean fake, right? Like, I'm not talking about being fake at all. But if I love Marvel movies and my Mr. Right, I want him to also love Marvel movies, then I'm going to watch Marvel movies. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is going to come kind of natural. I'm gonna maybe learn more about the comic side of Marvel, or go to Comic-Con and learn some things and be around people who have shared common interests. I'm gonna up my knowledge base. I'm going to be Mrs. Right for the guy who really loves Marvel movies. That's what I'm talking about, not the being fake and pretending you're something that you're not. Okay. Compassionate and callous is in here. I always look when I see you guys put in the OSU, I always think Oklahoma State University. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but thank you. If you will explain what it means, I would love that, because I think it's a greeting, um, and not necessarily Oklahoma State University. I don't even know if there is an Oklahoma State University. I may just be making things up now. Okay, Adrica Poise says we're in good company. Yeah, yeah. And Adrian Hicks says, yeah, because not Marvel movies is grounds for separation. Good to know. But yeah, I mean, and I use that as an example because I love Marvel movies, but I don't know much about the comics. I don't. Only what people have told me. And never have I been to Comic Con, but also I think Comic Con would be awesome. Like, wouldn't it just be awesome? I may just be talking about my kind of weird over here, but I think it would be so much fun. It just seems like it would be so much fun. And yes, there are people who get way, way, way into it. But I just think it would be an awesome time. Okay. Leon008, he says, your values have to fit within the caste system you think you deserve. Oh, you just opened a whole door. If you don't, I can never fathom why people ask for things and claim they're settling, including men who want stay-at-home wives. Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, you're referring back to when I talked about the using Maslow's for making bids and offers for submission and leadership, is that you there's a certain level where you are, and then you're trying to make bids and take offers to someone who's more healthy or more advanced or at a different level than you, right? Once you get up in the top ones, it's not necessarily more healthy, more advanced, whatever, but it's people who think they deserve, right? And that'll go both ways, right? Like you could be looking for love and belonging, but or you could be needing love and belonging, but because you think you don't have anything to offer, I'm such a crap person, whatever, you're making bids down in physiological needs. And then when you get the submissive type or the dictatorship type leader, then you complain about it, right? Then you're upset about it and it's creating more trauma because you don't know thyself. But then also it goes the other way. So maybe you need love and belonging, but you're trying to take bids and offers from the sugar daddy or the sugar mama type realm of just wanting to be fully in being taken care of. So exactly. Say including men who want stay-at-home wives. Yeah, I think it goes both ways. Is that if we don't really know ourselves, then we're not exactly sure where we're making bids and taking offers from, in what level, where we need to be for what we need. And then as a couple, like when a couple comes together, if this is a healthy relationship, they're actually going to ascend together. They're going to go through all those stages together. If this is a healthy relationship, they're not going to stay stuck where they're at because they're helping each other grow through this whole system. Okay, Adrian says they're fun. God, I want to go. Leon says Comic Con is extremely fun. Been there too many times. Yeah, and he says yes, including what you said. Yeah, yeah. So, Comic Con, yay! Like it just seems like a good time. All right, I'm going to check something here real quick. All right. I did not have any notes for day today because I was doing something which is kind of scary for me, which is just people at cold questions. Um, because I like to have the actual receipts and information like to give a person. Um, even in therapy, like it seems like it would be cold questions, but it's not necessarily because people fill out their intake paperwork. And then when you're doing the intake, you're just asking tons of questions. So the next time they come in, you already know, where we're going to go with the line of inquiry. So it can be a little mm, more planned out and organized. But today, I wanted to just give people the option if there's, you know, specific things that they're curious about, especially where psychology, mental health, relationships come into play, that they have a safe space to be able to ask those questions. I think it went pretty well. So, I think we'll just continue to do that on that Sunday Subscriber's Choice. Just know that there may be questions that you ask that I literally don't know the answer to. Um, I will tell you, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not just gonna like make stuff up. So if I don't know the answer to it, it may be that I'm gonna go and find some research on it and maybe just post it on the community tab or something. So that may come up as well. But we're hitting close right at an hour, and I want to respect people's time, especially it's Sunday. Hopefully, people are enjoying their Sunday and having a good day off. Um, Adrian Hicks. Okay, I got to show this one. He says, "Chat, Maggie's bullshitting. She knows everything." I know a lot about a few things and a little about a lot of things. I don't remember how that phrase goes, but that's kind of how that is. But I hope everybody has a great Sunday. To the replay gang, thank you for watching. And for those of you who do Shadow Work Wednesday, I will see you guys on Wednesday. If not, I'll see you all next Sunday. Thanks. Bye.